If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
This has been another episode sponsored by Online Horse College. If you haven't had a look at the wide variety of equine-specific accredited courses, then go to onlinehorsecollege.com and I'll see you over there. Before I introduce our guest today on Horse Chats, I just want to tell you about Sophie Barrington and Archer Creative, who are our sponsors for this episode. Sophie does website design, social media marketing. She also does graphic design, email marketing, public relations, and copywriting. So she's really good at doing equine marketing essentials, and they are the specialists in equine business marketing. If you'd like to catch up with Sophie Barrington from Archer Creative, go to horsechats.com, search for Sophie, search for Barrington, or search for Archer Creative, and you'll find her contact details and a few podcasts that she's done. She's been a regular contributor to our podcast. Meanwhile, we'll come back to Steve. We've got our special guest today, Steve Brinkworth from Horsemanship Essentials. Steve started off with his own horses, had a successful horse trekking business, taking riders to the Flinders Ranges in South Australia, which I think would be an interesting story just in itself. He's also been a successful endurance rider, winning a couple of quilty buckles, and word of mouth started, and he started to train horses. Now he delivers schools and spends a lot of time just training horses and working at Horsemanship Essentials. How are you today, Steve?
I'm well, thank you, Glenys. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, that's okay. I'm sure we've got lots to talk about. I'm very interested in a few different things that you've done, but we'll start off, I think, with a favourite quote that you might have, Steve. Have you got one for us?
My favourite quote, I think, would be "Never give up," which was what Harrison Ford said to an interviewer when he was interviewed about why he was still there, and lots of the people he started with weren't. And he's not really a Meryl Streep type actor. He's great, and I think he's awesome, but he said never give up. And I think that really is important in horses and life, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a good quote. You know, I'm just thinking as an endurance rider, it's like never give up, never give up. So, you know, endurance rider, but endurance in just horses and business as well.
Yes, it can be up and down, and it can be a bit of an emotional ride as well. And it's important to not let those things get in the way of your goals and, your enjoyment of the sport.
Yep. Steve, just thinking about what you do now. You teach a lot of horsemanship now. You know, you're getting results. Going back to the first time, you know, and I'm thinking about you had a horse called Charlie. Going back to even him, and I don't know if you got results with him, but when did you do anything to Charlie, or what did you do to get a result to make you think, wow, I'm going to get hooked on this. This is going to change the rest of my life. You may not have thought that at the time, but, you know, I always think that if you go back to those first times with a horse and that achievement and getting some sort of results, do you remember that day?
Oh, Glenys, we are going back a fair while now. Charlie and I was a kind of a kid, 12 or something like that when I was endurance riding on him. And I don't know what it's like for other kids and that, but I really wasn't greatly aware of things I was doing, I don't think. I did a lot of stuff and I rode, and I think one of the things that made us good at endurance was we rode a lot with the trekking business, so our horses were ridden a lot, and that they were fit. I got 1,000 miles on a couple of different horses, which is a bit of an achievement with endurance riding, keeping horses going. And I think we must have been good at what we did in trotting and keeping the horses balanced. So we did left and right diagonals, and we cantered on a left lead and we cantered on a right lead, and we did lots of ups and downs, even as in hills, and I jogged on foot and things like that. And he was a pretty smart horse, and I think I was able to manage him quite well. But one of the keys for it was the work. they were consistently in work, and it's hard for people. You're off at work all week and you get out with your horse once a week or once a fortnight for people, and that can be difficult. So I guess in answer to your question, there's not one particular moment where I was like, wow, I did a really great job there. I guess we did do a good job, but I think the work was really helped with the horses, consistent work, and also not being erratic in our own behaviour with the horses, so not flying off the handle and getting angry at them. I think we were quite consistent with how we treated them, so that helped them to be calmer and more focused on the job, whereas if we get emotional, they tend to get emotional themselves.
Yep. So starting off, when you're 11, you're in the business. Were you always going to stay in the business of horses? Was that just a given because your family were in the business?
That's a good question. I mean, I have had times where I wanted to be off being a ski instructor for snow skiing and various other things, but I've always been in horses. So I guess without knowing it, without making a conscious choice, I was always going to be in horses. I think I made a conscious choice about 15 years ago to actually really do what I'm doing. Yep. And I think that could have been when I started to realise that I could actually, rather than manage horses, I could actually really change their behaviours in a way that benefited the horse and the horse's owner as well, but the horse itself by changing the way it moves and its instinctual behaviours. You make a dramatic change in the horse's day-to-day life, and you ensure his long-term longevity because the sillier horses get as people kind of look at horses and think they're a bit silly, it starts to endanger their well-being, because they can become too dangerous and be put down and destroyed and various things like that. So I think that's when I started to really make that conscious choice. But I think it was always, I don't know about destined, but I was always going to be in horses.
Mm. When you go and do clinics now, do you pick out people and think, that you've got the core skills or the character traits to have a horse industry career? Or what would you say if you were looking for someone just at the very start of their career, if they're interested in working with horses? What sort of person would it be?
To answer your first question, which was when I go to a clinic and I'm teaching a clinic, do I see people who I think have a chance in the industry? I don't really look at people that way because what we're teaching them really changes how they are with horses, and they really come to understand the fundamental things about horses. And so once they do those things, they become very good with horses, even if they might not have started out particularly good at training a horse. Yep. They might have been fearful or intimidated or whatever. So there's been many times in my life when there's been a person you think, they're really suited at that, and then it actually turns out that they're not. And then someone else that you think is suited at something or not suited becomes really amazing. So I guess I've kind of removed or just come to not look at people that way, because people can change and learn. But referring to your second question about the things that would be important for a person who wants to be part of the horse industry, I think a real belief in themselves is important. It's important to look at other people and learn from other people, but it's also important to be able to believe in yourself to the extent that if you are criticised or told you've done something wrong or that you don't fall in a heap about it, that you can truly look at it and say, yes, you're correct, I did that wrong and I'm going to learn from that and improve. Or say, well, actually, what you said is not true, and maybe you've got some personal things going on yourself that caused you to say this. Maybe you wouldn't say that to their face, but that's the intellectual part of it, so that you don't get hugely affected by everyone else's input to what you might be doing. Another thing I think is that persistence we talked about earlier, and also a overall calmness in yourself, you can't be erratic emotionally. The more emotionally calm you are, the better. Not to the point that you're kind of dull and unresponsive, but, that you're not angry one minute and sad the next minute and, up and down. You need to be quite calm and consistent in your behaviour.
Yep.
That helps the horses, and it obviously helps yourself. So I think they're probably three fairly important characteristics.
I've got to go back to your first one though, because I absolutely take what you said about, not judging people, because sometimes people that you think haven't got the essential abilities actually learn to cope with those abilities. But surely one of the core skills then is that they've got to be open to learning about it.
Yeah, I think the ability to take on information is critical. So if the day that you think there's nothing else for you to learn, and I think that's in any industry, is probably the day that you may need to move on to a new career. I think I'll be pushing up daisies is when I stop learning. I'll be learning and being taught things by people and horses right up until the last moment. So it never really stops. It might not be the great leaps of learning that you had when you first started with horses, but as you go along, there's still very small little learnings consistently for you to take up.
Steve, you've mentioned that you've sort of made the commitment, right, this is what I'm going to do. You might have drifted a little bit, but what's the best thing about working with horses and working in the horse industry?
The impact that I can have, myself and my wife Sally, the impact we have on people with their horses. People come away from the clinics understanding why the horse does things he she does, and understanding that it's not personal. It's not the horse having a personal vendetta against you. That there's reasons, logical and understandable reasons why every behaviour a horse has, he has, and there's things that you can do about it that will help him to no longer need to have those behaviours. The beauty of horses is they're not attached to any behaviours whatsoever. Humans are more inclined towards, I do these things for reasons in our past, and we're very defensive of the things we do, and so we want to hang on to our behaviours. Even if they're not benefiting us, we tend to hang on to them. Horses aren't that way. So as soon as you show a horse a better way, that they feel calm and they feel safe with those new behaviours, they just take them on board. And that's really inspiring when you see people understand that, and they're no longer in a battle of wills with their horse, because they understand that the horse isn't out to get them. It's not doing anything personally. It's just needs to be taught these things, and then it's just becomes such a placid creature that's so willing to give and to try for us. There's no nastiness in horses at all. It's not really part of their nature. It can become a learned behaviour, but overall they're not nasty. They're just so willing. Yeah. So that's very inspiring, and that's probably one of the best things, I think. Obviously meeting people and helping them is a really great thing as well.
Yeah. Tell us about people who've influenced you. Your family, obviously, because you had the family business, but other people. I know that you're open to learning. Who's influenced you? Who's helped you?
Yeah, one that when you ask that question, a person that comes to mind is Craig Johnson. He is a reiner from in the United States, and he's been one of the highest earning reiners in history over there. Now, while I'm not a reiner at all, his philosophy was really great. He would break things down with horses into little bite-sized pieces, and the horses were never a fault. And it was really great to see how his horses moved and the things he was able to do with them. So he certainly was quite an inspirational person for me to see. I saw him in the States, and I also saw him over here, so at Equitana a few years back. So he's certainly one that comes to mind first and foremost.
Okay, good. What about horses? You talked about Charlie, but anyone else that you think, I've really learned a lot from this horse?
Yeah, I think of the horses that I've currently got and I've had since I was a kid, and they've all taught me a lot. I actually, once Charlie retired from endurance, and my sister did a bit of endurance on him, and then I did some, and I took him to, I think we got 2,000 miles on Charlie, and he had little ears that hung out to the side like motorbike handles, and he was just a bitzer of a horse, but he was just tough, and he was able to do a lot. But the next one I had was a stallion called Paladin Syed, and I used to, when I was only, in my early teens, and I did another 1,000 miles on that horse as well, and he taught me a lot. But one of the things he taught me was that a stallion can ignore his stallion tendencies because he's taught to ignore them. He's taught to just do his job of being ridden or whatever, and not see a mare and be all stallion-y about it. So that taught me quite a bit. But then I've had another one on the front of my book, Horsemanship Essentials. There's a horse called Monty, and he's an Arab that I had from Montego Bay, from the Montego Bay lines, and that horse taught me a lot. He taught me a lot. Very smart horse. So they all seem to teach you things, and the interesting thing about them, it's like they come into your life to teach you some things that you need to learn at the time to advance your horsemanship. And each one's got these different things they seem there to teach you. And sadly, Monty, he passed earlier this year, and I really felt like he was kind of like, I've done my part.
Yep.
He'd taught me a lot, and it really seemed like he'd kind of said, I'm kind of done here, and he moved on. So yeah, those are certainly the horses that have taught me lots of things.
Yeah,
and it'll be interesting to see what one walks in the door next. Yeah.
What do you think your proudest moment's been?
Well, the stallion that I talked about earlier, Paladin Syed, we got awarded the Horse of the Year for High Point Junior Horse of the Year, fittest horse, and that moment was very very special, because it's about, fittest horse in endurance riding is not whether you came first or second, or it's about the preparation and how you've looked after your horse, and it's a recognition of that. And him getting the Pure Arabian High Point Horse of the Year, that was pretty momentous for me.
Pretty good, yeah. Thinking about where you are now, going out, doing clinics, you've obviously got to put the miles in before you start to do clinics and teach and everything, and you've certainly put the miles in, not just on the horses, but put the time in with horses before you've started off on a career of teaching people. But what do you think, if you think of a business that going out doing clinics, what's the most challenging part of the business?
You've got to be able to help every single type of person, and you've got to be able to help every single type of horse. So you've got to realise that when you're training horses, they're not, you can't use a cookie cutter approach. Just because that worked with that horse doesn't mean it will work with the next horse, or it might be in a different order. You might need to do that first and then the next thing later. And if you aren't able to adapt your training to each individual horse, you're not going to maximise his potential. You're not going to increase his longevity and his daily well-being.
Yep.
And that goes for the people too, because you've got all these different people with all their different things that have happened in their horsey life and their personal life. And a lot of the time our personal life affects our life with our horse. And you've got to be able to help those people as well through all their different learned behaviours about horses and around horses, and help them to achieve their goals. So there's sometimes people come along and they're a bit gifted, or that they find things easier. You don't treat those people any differently than someone that's struggling, but you don't concentrate on the struggling person even and leave the person that's finding things a bit easier alone. You've got to be able to keep everyone included as much as you can and help everyone. So I think that's quite a challenge when you've got such a variety of horses and such a variety of people.
So when you go out to a group of students that you haven't seen before, what's a common fault, a common challenge that they have with their horse?
Generally, for people, it's about the things that have gone in the past, and then they have behaviours that seem to have come about with their new horse. So people have repetitions of the same things happening with their horses. And then so that can make people feel like they're not going to be successful with their horse because that one did it and this one does it as well. Generally the things that happen are people are pushed on by their horses, and the horses aren't focused, and they're looking around and looking at other things. And the faster people go, like as in walk, trot, canter, as they get into the faster gaits, the horse gets more pulley, more scattered, more shies and props, and they start to find it hard to take the horse places. And just in the day-to-day handling of them, can be pushy, and people get hurt. There's not very often that we get a clinic where each person hasn't had some sort of serious injury, that they had to take some time off from horses while it repaired. Yep. And that really inhibits people's mental state with their horses. Especially after you've had kids, I think, because most of my clients are women. I get quite a lot of men, but mostly women. But they're women after they've had children. I think they're not as confident as they were beforehand. I'm not sure whether it's because they're like, I can't leave the husband to look after the kids, so they've got to be there to do it. So they've got to look after themselves, or whatever it is. But that seems to be quite a common occurrence for women, is to be really quite gung-ho when they were young and just do anything, ride anything with their horses, and then they might have a bit of a break while they have kids, and then suddenly the kids are getting a bit older, they've got a bit of time, they get back into horses and they find they just don't have the confidence like they did when they were younger, and how to address that.
What sort of exercises do they get then? Exercises to increase confidence and get it so that horses don't worry about the faster gaits, that the horses themselves are quite well behaved and quite happy to be in the faster gaits and have horses in faster gaits around them, but also for the people that aren't confident, what can you do to get them more confident?
The key thing I think we as humans is missed with horses is that the behaviours horses exhibit is due to the way that a horse moves. So their physical movement causes them to move in a way that can be pushy. It pushes into people. It goes too fast. So they pull on the bit and they run away and do all these things, and then they're shy and proppy, and the faster they go, the worse it can get. So once we understand, once people see with the horses, and it's not, in a clinic, it's not about me telling them, do this, do that, because if you tell people to do various things without them understanding the hows and the whys, it can be hard for them to do it when they get home. They can't remember the exact instructions. But once you show them what the horse needs to do with its body, so that, say, if you're trying to walk in a straight line down a corridor and you're on the ground, say, and the horse keeps just squashing you into the wall, it's not personal. For example, on most horses, the right hind foot will not go towards the front right foot. It actually tracks out of line, so it steps 3 or 4 inches to the right of the line of the front foot. And so what that does, and the horse's ribs are bent to the right, so the horse's nose is more to the left. So as the horse tries to go forward in a straight line, he actually falls towards the wall on the right because his right hind foot steps out and a little bit short. So if you were walking in a straight line and you were on the off side of the horse would actually be moving towards squashing you against the wall that you were walking along, because his right hind foot steps out of line. Mm-hmm. So once they see those things and the horse is pulling himself from his front end because that right hind foot steps a bit short now, once you make that right hind foot step straight towards the front foot and it starts to step up towards the front foot, then the horse suddenly doesn't veer towards the right and he doesn't squash you anymore. He can walk in a straight line. And if you get that done through walk and trot and on, a left rein and a right rein and straight, everything changes for the horse just because of that one foot. Which might sound like, wow, what, really? But it's quite amazing.
Do you think that we've started horses off like that because we lead them off the left rein and we encourage them to look a little left because they're leading that way and that encourages the quarters to swing out? Do you think that's caused it?
I think that certainly doesn't help. Uh-huh. There's actually research now that possibly thinks that as the horse comes out of the birth canal, that it may actually get a bit squished and may even fracture ribs and things that causes even a foal to be bent to the left straight after birthing. Now don't quote, that's not factual. It's not, it's just a theory, but they come out as foals and that they turn left better than they turn right. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, our halters do up on the left and our bridles and our rugs and we tend to be taught to lead on the left. And, so those things add to the problem.
Yep. If you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now. Have a look. horsechats.com. The book, Horsemanship Essentials, would you like to just give a bit of an outline on what's included in that book and why you started it? What made you write that book? Because not everyone gets out of bed in the morning and says, I think I'll write a book. What inspired you to write it?
Well, I must be honest, my wife was Sally was a big inspiration with maybe a bit of a big stick as well, saying you need to write a book about this and put it all down. So I think without Sally, it probably wouldn't have happened. But the idea behind the book is you can't get to everyone, and also there's a lot of people who aren't confident to go to clinics or don't want to or whatever. So you can reach a lot of people with the book. And the different modalities, so videos, reading, actually coming to clinics, all of those things seem to help get your message across. Mm-hmm. So in the book, I'm outlining from start to finish exactly what I would do with a horse that's coming in, whether it's a horse that's not broken in or whether it was a horse coming in with problems to rectify. I always start at exactly the same place. You teach the horse to focus first and then move correctly, flex his ribs left and right and get your transitions, your gaits and that in place. And that's outlined in the book how I use the yards to create focus and how I use feeding to help with my ridden work, right and left reins when I'm feeding. So I've tried to include as much as I possibly can in the book. So it's a real great training tool.
Okay, good. And remember, you can find all the books recommended by our guests at horsechats.com/books. You can have a look at the guest page for the individual book they recommended, or just look at the recommended books by order of popularity at horsechats.com/books. Now, what are you looking forward at the moment, Steve?
Well, we've got Equitana is our biggest thing coming up, which, we've got clinics and courses and things, but Equitana is in November in Melbourne this year, and we were invited to be a educator at Equitana. So you have a couple of sessions where we'll be out on the sand arenas there, trying to help people with our message and what we do. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then starting to plan for next year with where we'll be. We've got clinics in New South Wales and Queensland and Victoria. So and I'd like to head overseas as well and do some teaching over there as well. We've got some invitations and people over there. It's just trying to it can be hard to get out of the country and leave your own horses and things for a while. But that's our goals for next year.
When you said that, it sounds like Australia is a country that it's hard to get out of, but I understand what you mean. It's hard to move away from the work that you're doing in your own place and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It can be. You've got your own horses that are at home, and then you've also got your clients that are around.
Yes.
And when you go off, you don't abandon them as such, but you're not there for them, so that can be difficult. But the idea of what I'm doing is so that they don't need me. That's what I want for them, is that they understand how to do this themselves, and they really don't need me anymore.
Yep.
So that's my goal for my clients.
All right. Now, just in a couple of sentences, can you summarise your philosophy with horses, please?
In a couple of sentences.
It's hard, isn't it? When you think about, you go and do a clinic and you might go 2 days or even 5 days, and I'm saying just do it in 2 sentences. It's all right.
Yeah. No, that's all right, Glenys. I think I can sum up my philosophy, which is posture dictates state. So what that means is the physical structure and how the horse uses its body dictates its state of mind. So if I can use a quick example, if you were standing next between 2 sheds in a tight space and your horse was feeling really fearful and scared in that space because it's claustrophobic, to actually make it feel better in that space, you will physically help it to get its right hind foot to hit the ground and take weight so that its poll and its jaw went soft. As soon as you got that to happen, the horse would perceive the same area to be now safe. He would be safe in that area, but you haven't actually taken him to the space and you haven't changed the space that he's in.
Yep.
You've changed his physical posture, so therefore you change his perception of his surrounds. That's what we've got to do with horses, their physical posture right, and then we can go anywhere, do anything, any of the gates, and the horse isn't fearful and intimidated, and he stays focused and on job.
Yep.
Makes him very safe.
I think that's good. Good explanation too. Steve, how can people contact you? They're going to be able to get you on horsechats.com/Steve Brinkworth, or go to horsechats.com and search for Steve, search for Brinkworth. But just if they're ready now, what contact details have you got for us?
They're fine to my mobile phone number is actually on our website. So I'm happy to give that out if people would want to contact us, which is 0417 864 062. And we're also contactable through the website, which is www.stevebrinkworth.com. And you can also look up Horsemanship Essentials Steve Brinkworth on Facebook and contact us through that.
Okay.
So any of those mediums, and we'll get back to you straight away.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Steve. And I'll talk to you about coming back and being a guest another time on Horse Chats. It'd be really good if you can come back, and I've enjoyed talking to you today. So thank you.
Thank you, Glenys, and I'll look forward to speaking with you again.
Okay. Bye. Now, if you're still there, you probably know that I'm absolutely passionate about education within the horse industry. That's why I host this podcast. My other venture is Online Horse College. Have a look now at onlinehorsecollege.com, and I'll see you over there.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.